Okay, very good. The meeting will come to order. Welcome this morning. It's Friday, February 16th. Thanks for getting up early. Appreciate our staff and all of you getting here early. First order is just to call the roll. So if you'd call the roll, please, Ms. Jeffrey.
Yes, good morning. Representative Bear.
Here.
Representative Byron.
Here.
Representative Locke.
Present.
Representative Northrup.
Here.
Representative Oakley.
Here.
Representative Storer.
Here.
Representative Strzok.
Here.
Representative Swanitzer.
He's excused. He's across the hall chairing another committee.
Thank you. And Chairman Harshman.
Here. Thank you. Okay, welcome again, everyone. And again, seeing many of the same faces, so I'll keep my opening remarks very brief, but just decorum, make sure and introduce yourself, who you represent, where you're from, and then just always work through the chairman so we can have all voices heard. We never have back and forth between legislators or witnesses. And then I think the other thing too, these property tax, like many things, and you have, everybody's passionate. You wouldn't be here at 7:30 on a Friday morning on a snow if you didn't have some passion, right? And so if somebody's testifying and you don't agree with them, we're not going to boo or hiss or make noises. Or if you're on the same side, we're not going to clap and do those kind of things. So that's the decorum of the meeting. And so all voices can be heard. And so we really appreciate you being here. Now, and many of you have been with us for the last few days. So you'll recall that House Bill 3445, and I think we have laid on the table. How about 127 too? We finished. We were in the middle of working.
Yeah, and I handed out a.
Okay, so we were in the middle of working that. So, and then we laid it on the table. So here's what I'd like to do this morning. If we can take votes, finish working 3, 4, 45, and 127. Because 3 and 4 kind of are, well, and they're committee bills and they're kind of relief things. And then, 45 and 27 are different type of exemptions, kind of similar. And then if we can finish those, I'd like to get started on 134, which is a deferral program, which is different from the rest of them. We've heard that bill before. It passed the House of Representatives, exact same bill. There isn't a comma or period change. Passed the House with great support last year. So we'd like to work that. Perhaps, depending on the speed of the morning, perhaps that bill can get out. And then when we come back together at noon, we'll be a couple doors down at room number 6. And then we've got a couple similar bills, the tax holiday and the homestead exemption are similar type bills. We'll kind of work those two. And then there's a ratio assessment rate cut bill, and then House Bill 203, which is a swap sales tax for a large exemption on residential. So kind of we're going to go in the order of the meeting notice is what in short, and try to work them out. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll need a motion to take House Bill 3 from the table.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Vice Chair Oakley is second. Okay, so House Bill 3 now is on the table, and are there property tax exemption for long-term homeowners? We've taken public comment. We've worked it a little bit. Are there any more, and I'll just, so everybody can kind of get that in front of them, any more thoughts or amendments or those kind of things as we work this? Took a lot of testimony. Okay, is there any, Representative Storer, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have the exact language, but I would like to put some kind of means test into the bill if the committee would consider that.
So go ahead and make that motion if you'd like, or.
I'd like to make the motion to put a means test into HB 3.
Okay, and
It
you
would be
more, any specific numbers, those kind of things? And
I would stick with I think we're going to end up where we are with HB 4, maybe at 165% of median county income.
similar than to HB 4, those?
Yes.
Okay, at 165%. Is there a second? Okay, I'll second that for discussion. Okay. So any further discussion on that? What's your thoughts on that? Representative Storr, bring that to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just think the amount of cost is quite high for counties and the schools. And once again, the idea is to give relief where it's really needed. And there's certainly a lot of people in my community who may qualify for this, myself included, actually, as a matter of fact, but who really don't necessarily need such a tax break. So I just think it makes sense to target it with a income.
Okay, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't disagree with the concept. My concern is, like in HB4, when we're talking about somebody applying for a refund, the numbers are so much smaller on getting, the assessors calculating, getting into people's income and calculating it. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just making that, but I think the numbers, and if we put it into the bill, then you're at, it just seems very difficult to administer to me. And if I'm wrong on that, and this isn't difficult, like I say, because conceptually I'm with you. It's the administration that's my concern.
Okay, any further discussion? Representative Bear and then Representative Locke.
Just for clarification, yesterday we were speaking about another bill that had hundreds of millions of dollars on the fiscal note. This one has $5 million on the school foundation and $5 million on the ad valorem on the local funding. So we're talking about a $10 million tax relief, if you will. So this is, in my opinion, peanuts compared to what we are trying to do. So I would not restrict it any more than it already is.
Okay, Representative Locke.
Yeah, I think that we've left these numbers high. I had put in an amendment to bring the age number down. That being said, we left it very high. I'm in favor of this kind of as it is. I think someone's been here a while. They paid for 30 years. They're getting older. I think this makes a person feel like they're starting to own their home, So I recommend an aye on this. So yeah, or excuse me, a no on the amendment. Sorry.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, question being called. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Okay, those opposed?
No.
Okay, now, I just want to back up a little bit, and I think I made the motion on page 4 to add like a number 6 on line 15, and it was a military veteran who's counted Wyoming as their home state all these years. And I believe that passed. Is that how everybody, that's how I recall, and Ms. Jeffries giving me the nod, so I have a good memory, but it's just short. But I just want to make sure that we did that, so. Okay, and then I recall also, and in my notes on the bottom of page 4 over to page 5, that we have put includes associated, whatever that word is, associated improved land, residential land, instead of the 1 acre. Because you might be on an 1.5 acre lot, or you might be on a 4 acre lot. So to get that, we already take care of that. The assessors already take care of that. So is the associated improved land.
But
Is that, go ahead, Ms. Jeffrey, do you have that?
Well, what I have indicated, it was suggested by Strzok and then seconded by Zwanitzer. It says associated residential property. Does that fit?
I want to make sure, is there, the assessors here, there's a certain words that we use in all these. Is it associated improved land, or that's what?
Yeah.
Okay,
Land.
associated residential land. We want to make sure we get the words right, so it's the
Thank you.
same all the way through. Okay, thank you. So the word associated residential land.
All right, we've got it. Thank
Okay,
you.
so we've got that, and that was passed as well, or do you have that?
I don't have whether
Okay,
it's passed.
so we're gonna need a motion on that. Would anybody want to entertain a motion on that bottom? Includes on the bottom associated residential land instead of 1 acre of land. And the point is, you're on an acre and a half, or you're on a 4-acre lot or whatever. So the assessors take care of that. So, okay, go ahead, Representative Lott.
I'll move that.
Okay, so it's been moved, includes associated. Okay, seconded by the vice chair. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, Representative Byron.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. You know, I'm going to be in favor of this to get it out, to get talking about it, but I really am, I think about the great side of the state in the west, and many properties in the western side and all over the state sit on hundreds of acres that may be residential. So, I think it's going to be debated heavily on the floor, but I think you make a great point, what the cutoff at 1, and then what if you own 1.25, but there's many, many properties that own 35 or 100 that still have not gotten that ag exemption. So I would just caution you, I will be voting in favor of this, but as we move forward, I think it's interesting to think about.
Okay, Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I agree with what the good representative just said, and because since we talked about this, we've gotten further testimony about the difficulties of it. I don't know if we would need to hear from the assessors. I don't want to get into something lengthy, but you think you do. I'd like to know if there's a way to put fairly easy sideboards, but not go that big.
We want to make this thing easy and really keep it consistent.
Yeah.
That's the main deal. Ms. Huxtable, why don't you help us out here?
Mr.
Make sure we
Chairman,
get this right.
Dixie Huxtable, Commerce County Assessor. That is the topic, and we're still trying to figure out the exact language that works. And you're absolutely correct. You have hundreds of acres. You've got parcels with hundreds of acres with a house on it that's called residential land. There is the option to be residential improved versus residential vacant, but that's going to take some work for us to sort out the rules on. If I had a suggestion of residential land up to a certain number of acres.
And that wouldn't be, sorry, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Go ahead.
That wouldn't be that difficult to administer. You could do that?
If we had till 2025, yes,
Sure.
ma'am.
Okay. And so
Chairman,
can you
sorry.
give us that language again, Ms. Huxtable?
Residential land up to,
Up to 5 acres? But I thought the 1 acre. was-
Chairman, I'm going to defer that to you. We had talked about 35, that's a number within the ag statutes.
Oh.
Anything less than 40 has to be subdivided, and less than 35 is not ag if it's in a subdivision. So that was just a number that was already in some statutes.
Up to 35 acres?
Either way, those bigger parcels are going to have to be worked on by the assessor to get that dollar amount out and to work with the system to get that. It's not something we can do for 24, but we think we could work on it for 25. So
Okay, okay, very good. So
I have one
go ahead,
question.
Representative Northrop.
Thank you. So get away from it a little bit. So it's more expensive to have residential land than it is to have ag land. Is that correct as far as tax value goes?
Mr. Chairman, typically that is correct.
Okay, so then it would push it back upon the owner to come in and talk to their assessor to fix that problem. If they're
Mr. Chairman,
using
yes.
it as ag.
They have to be using the land for an agricultural purpose to be ag, no matter what the size. So that's the use is what the trigger is.
It's gonna be a very small group, okay. We just don't want to do anything that messes it up. We want to keep it going. Okay, so who made the motion? Okay, do we want to clarify it a little bit? And who is your second? Oakley?
Me. So we think it's friendly to make this change, the associated land up to 35 acres? Up to 35. Associated residential land.
Is that
up to
friendly?
35 acres?
Okay, so that's friendly. That's the amendment now is associated land up to 35 acres. Associated residential land up to 35 acres.
No?
And that matches similar statute. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay,
Yes.
okay, Vice Chair Oakley.
Wait, not on that, on this amendment, no.
I'm on the amendment.
Question.
All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's been adopted. Are there any other?
Yeah, we missed the surviving spouse one.
Okay. I think we put it in, but let's double check on the
did.
surviving spouse. Do you have that on?
It starts on line 3 on page
Yeah.
3.
May I speak?
Yeah.
So, and I know,
Yeah,
and
it's
I just
on there.
remembered this,
It's a different bill, I
and Miss, it is, but we put it in here too, right?
It's already in here, I think.
Page 3, line 3.
But we were gonna get the language, unless remarried. That's what it's, the unless remarried.
That's right, I have that note.
And I was gonna get, and then Dixie gave it to me. Did you get the, Mr. Crago, did you get the the statute, the unless remarried clause?
Is that added at the end of line 6? Unless remarried, it says Oakley, and is that a conceptual?
That was conceptual, and then I remember, I didn't get you the full language, but we've got that in there.
Okay.
So I guess
you
we
have
passed
that,
it
Ms. Jeffrey?
conceptual.
I'm sorry?
You have that?
I just have added at the end of line 6, unless remarried. And- Yes, sir.
Sorry for my mic. Are there any other? Representative Byron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you know, kind of going off of our discussion earlier in the week, and I appreciated it from this committee, talking about where that kind of fine age is. And I have to imagine on page 2, line 9, that this is going to be discussed often, but I do have an appetite to strike 30 on page 2, line 9, and I make a motion to strike 30 on page 2, line 9, and put 25 for now. I think it's important to, you know, someone moves here when they're 40 years old and pays for 25 years. I think it's fair to, I know it's expanding the program slightly, but I think it's worth consideration, discussion.
Okay, so that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded by Representative Northrup. I think. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take your word.
All of my memory, my hearing in this left ear. Okay. Is there any discussion? Representative Oakley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this, and I know there's a few of us that kind of want the higher. So 25, I guess, is as low as I can support, but as far as a compromise, I think a couple of us holdouts might support this. I think we're good to go.
Any other discussion?
Question?
Okay, question on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, that motion's been carried. Okay. Any other amendments to this bill? Representative Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having been on the prevailing side, I'd like to reconsider the amendment where we add the word unless remarried. And the reason I want to bring this up again and re-vote on it is because I believe we're using tax policy to influence social.
Maybe just make a motion. You can just make a motion to remove it if you want.
Okay, I move that we
Whatever.
remove that.
So your motion would be that in the 6 where we put in that language unless, say it again, unless,
Unless remarried, I believe is what we
want to
added.
remove that. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Representative Locke, okay. Any other discussion? Any discussion? Okay, the motion to remove that language at the end of page 6, Ms. Jeffrey, you good with that? Got the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I think that motion failed.
Division.
Division called. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1, 2. That motion carried. Okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't quite sure. Okay. Very good. Any other motions on this bill?
I have a question.
Okay, question, Ms. Jeffrey?
On line 15, page 4, where we add paragraph 6 or subparagraph 6 about the veteran who counted Wyoming as their home state. I've heard the word mentioned combat veteran. Are we adding that word?
I didn't add that to this because it's such a long, so I didn't add that intentionally on it. And I know some of our other statutes, and if members want to add that, I mean, I would support that. Go ahead, Representative Bear.
I don't intend to make that change, but I do know that the proper language should be home of record, because that's
Right.
what they file with the military. I'm not sure if that's the verbiage we're using. So it should be military who declares Wyoming as their home of record.
And I think Ms. Jeffries, just write that down, and legal will get that too. That's a good point, Representative Bear, so make sure. Thank you.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that? Military who, we had who counted Wyoming as their home state,
I use the word declared.
who declared,
What military personnel who declare Wyoming as their home of record.
okay. Thank you.
Very good, that's good. Okay, and we don't need to vote on it. It's the same, just to clean up
Right.
of that language. And then, you want to add to that, Mr. Winnie, long veteran? Yes, Mr. Chairman. Make sure we got it right.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. Point of information just here. The term home of record in the military parlance is a document that certifies where you entered the service from. It doesn't denote where you may have later changed your home or your residence, or
Yeah.
there's a tax term, domiciliary, which is unique to the Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act, because military members have to declare a domicile to whom they have to pay taxes, income taxes. That doesn't make a lot of difference to Wyoming, but it does to some states.
Sure.
And so using the term home of record, I understand where Representative Barron is going, but that might end up linking you to only those veterans that entered the service from Wyoming. And I don't think that's really what Representative Bear is getting at. For example, my home of record was Virginia. And that was in 1968 when I entered the Naval Academy. That single piece of paper followed me through my entire 30-some years. I changed my state, my domiciliary state, to Wyoming in 1978, and then from 78 on was a Wyoming resident, and I think that's what Representative Bear is getting at. So I submit that using the term home of record won't get where Representative Bear wants to get.
Almost, sounds like you could really do both, or, one or the other, really. Go ahead, Representative Bear. What's your
Thank you,
thought?
Mr. Chairman. I think we need to use domiciliary because, these members of the military purposely choose that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I used the wrong term. I too have a short memory, so.
Okay,
So
do
as
we
their
have this
dom-
right? Do you have this right?
So I think, so instead of saying as their home of record, we'll say as their domiciliary. Sound good?
And I'll tell you, when I made this motion the other day, I was thinking of the Wyoming kid who joins
Right.
and keeps Wyoming all these years, travels
Right.
around the world, serves our country. That's what I was thinking. What he's thinking is something different, as a Virginia kid who 10 years later chose Wyoming. And I'm thinking of the Wyoming kid from Midwest who, joined the Air Force and served for 40 years
Right.
and kept a Wyoming driver's license all those times. So we're kind of getting into two different things. And I think we're probably going to have to talk about this and vote on it. Go ahead, Representative Bear.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would be the one that would fall under this new category of using domiciliary, but my spouse was from Wyoming. So
Sure, so
just naturally chose the state that had the lower tax because we weren't there. But let's point out the fact that we're talking about somebody that returned from military service
yeah,
to the state of Wyoming. So they may have changed it for, tax purposes, but in the end, they had to end up here to have a home that has property tax on it.
I liked your term home state, but I don't know if that's works or
Yeah, no.
domiciliary.
so we need to change this, and I think we just talk about this and vote on it. So there's really, if we choose the term domiciliary, right? That was your term? Domiciliary. That's what I said, domiciliary.
Domiciliary, yes, sir. That's a term of art brought on by the Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act to enable various states with income taxes to tax their military members wherever they are. That's not used in Wyoming because we don't have an income tax, so, but
Maybe
the term
this-
stands.
Maybe really what we're trying to get at is that this 30-year thing, they should be able to count those years that they chose Wyoming as their domiciliary. That's what so maybe we need to clean that up a little more. So really that subparagraph 6, a military veteran
Personnel.
who counted Wyoming as their domiciliary state, those years will count. They're going to clean this up, but those years will count towards their 30 years.
Is that good? Yeah, I think that.
That's what we're trying to get at. Now,
Are we on?
legal will clean that up some more, but you got what we're getting at.
Right. I
We
put
passed this.
domiciliary for
That's what
now.
we're trying to get at.
Okay.
Well, details matter, and that's when you're trying to solve problems. It's not,
Right.
you got to get to all the details, so we appreciate it. Okay, so I think we're good. Members, we good there?
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, are there any other issues with this bill? Representative Storr?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose an amendment for page 4, line 13. After the word trust, add in or a limited liability corporation. We have a lot of families that use an LLC
Okay,
to hold their residence but again, for the benefit of the occupant, we
Okay,
would
is
keep
there a
that language.
Representative Byron seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion's been adopted. Did you get that, you guys? Ms. Jeffrey? Okay, okay,
Question?
very good. Any other amendments?
Question?
Question on the bill.
Question on the bill. So we're voting on a bill in this committee, House Bill 3 as amended. Ms. Jeffrey, please call the roll. And I'll hold the roll open for the good chairman who's across the, working his committee, I believe, so.
She's an absentee.
He filled his form.
Oh, he filled out an absentee.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
I have
He's
that.
ahead of us then.
Okay, let's take the vote. Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer cast an absentee vote of aye, and Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
So we
Okay.
have 9 aye votes. Thank you.
Okay, and Vice Chair Oakley has wanted to present this bill on the floor, if we get there, so the floor manage that, very good. Okay, next bill that we have worked, do we need a motion to remove from the table is House Bill 4.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. So House Bill 4 is in front of the committee now, property tax refund program. Now, we've had members who are talking about maybe reducing. First of all, let me just be clear, this program is moving forward. These are amendments to the program to add more tiers. So even if this bill fails or whatever, that program is going to move forward. But, okay, so as we move forward to the amendments to this program, are there any amendments? Okay, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of the discussion of simplifying and reducing the number of amendment or tiers, and I can walk through the amendment, but the general idea is to reduce from 5 tiers to 3 tiers, to go from a refund of 100%, 75, 50, and 25 would be the lowest amount of a refund. And the tiers would be from 125% at a median income for 100% to 165% of median income, and to put inside the other two, to go from 125% of median, 138.33, 151.67 to 165%. So that would be the highest median income. And I can walk through, I think, what are the actual amendments for the bill if you'd like,
So-
but that's the concept.
Actually, okay, and so that's the motion really is to keep the 125, 165 would be the top, and then 2 in between there.
That's correct, Mr.
That's how
Chairman.
okay, is there a second?
2 in between there?
Yeah,
So 4?
So, because it would be, so 4 total,
Or total?
So you go
Second
from,
the
se-
motion for
It's been
discussion.
seconded for discussion. Okay, discussion. Go ahead, Representative Oakley.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I conceptually am for going even easier. I'm thinking 2 tiers. So I'm gonna vote no on this. So I just, before you go into it, I appreciate your work, Representative Storr, but before we really dig in, I mean, maybe figure out how many tiers we're gonna do.
Representative Byron.
Thank you, and I agree with that, Mr. Chairman, and I also, there is an amendment that will be passed out here shortly. Now would be a great time if we can to just add a second tier in addition to what currently is in statute. And just for everyone's knowledge, as we consider this current amendment that currently is on the table, the amendment would be a tier of, I believe, 145%. So just adding 1 tier in addition to what's currently in statute. And I believe that the maximum refund on that would be 60%. So it's coming in front of committee members right now. So although I do appreciate the thought, hearing from the testimony we had, it seems that the word complicated was used a lot. And I think it's hard for me to continue to ask our local offices to implement some of this stuff. So
Okay, but we have an amendment on the table now, so we're on that amendment. We've got, I'm not gonna even look at this one that's passed out yet.
So question on.
Further discussion? I want to have Representative Storr have the final word on it. Go ahead, sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the idea behind these amendments to the refund program are to recognize that currently you've just got this cliff where you either qualify if your income is at 175% of median, or excuse me, 125% of median, or not. So the idea was to really just do a very equal stair step down, so that people are able to get at least some kind of income, and to do that in an equitable fashion. So I still think a refund of 75%, 50%, and 25% makes sense to me. And I think the math is on the actual income, median income is actually pretty easy to figure out. So
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think we're ready to vote on this proposed amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion has failed. So other motions, Representative Byron?
thank you, Chairman Harshman. Committee, I move proposed amendments in front of you right now in House Bill 4, and essentially this would delete all the additional levels we inserted during the interim, and recognizing the concern about this cliff, and it adds one more, which would be, which actually is currently sitting in the bill. So it does not add one, it just lets one retain, which is on your bill, will be page number, real quick. Page number 4, lines 16 through 19 remains. The other ones are stricken. So page 4, lines 10 through 14, page 4, lines 21, 22, page 5, lines 1 and 2, and page 5, lines 4 through 12.
Second.
Okay, so this motion, just to be clear then, just really retains that subparagraph Roman 3, line 16 through 19 on page 4.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
So the 125, 100%, then goes to 145% income at 65% of the refund. Okay, is everybody clear? Any other discussion? Representative Locke.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to thank you for bringing this in, but I also want to just say that, I was kind of with this the other day, but now I'm leaning more in the direction, and the reason I'm going to vote against this, and so I'm going to vote no, is I'm kind of in the mode now, I think we need to give as much relief as we can. That's where my head is on this. So I know there's some complexities here, but I think with some growing pain, there might be some growing pains, but I think the more we put back in people's hands and the more options we give, it's better. So I just wanted to make that clear. I know I had spoken with a good representative yesterday, and thinking it through, that just wanted to make sure he understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? I just says, if you still got your sheets, okay, Representative Bear, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment. I do understand the complexity, and one of the comments was that it's going to be complex for the applicants. And I would just say that, they're already having to gather together their tax returns. These are highly motivated individuals. I don't think that that should preclude us from making a more complex opportunity for the taxpayer.
Turn. So just looking at this tier at 145% income. So then that puts the Wyoming medium income then at, is that 107? Yep. And then you look at it by county, and then you take that over and look at the size of the refund. At 65%. Okay. Okay, any further discussion on?
Question.
Okay. Just want to pause for a minute, make sure we get, because once we take this, we're not going back. Just want to make sure we got this right. Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, chairs in doubt, please raise your hands. All those in favor, 1, 2, 3. All those opposed, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that motion has failed. So we've had one with just adding one tier, and then we've had one with adding 4 tiers. Maybe there's some place in the middle we can get to on this. Has anybody got an amendment?
I'll take a stab at it.
Okay, Representative Bear.
Looking at the chart, I think if you wanted to just simplify it and still keep the maximum amount, let's just eliminate the 135 tier and the 155 tier.
Just kind of go every other one then. huh?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
sir.
maybe the 135, the 155, and the 165.
Yeah, that would be,
Just kind of go every other one.
okay.
Kind of like
So-
Representative Store had, but a little bit different.
So I believe the 125 is what we enacted last year.
Right.
So if we're gonna, yeah, we would eliminate 145 and 165, keep 3 of them.
Oh, just keep 3, okay.
We would maintain, I'm sorry, it's not necessarily the best. Good.
Maybe keep
I think
145
keep 145.
and 165.
Well, you could do it either way. You could keep 3 more, keep 2 more, however you want to.
Let's just create a new one at 150 and then keep 175 and eliminate all the others.
No, 175 is not worth
All right, I'll concede removing 175. So we're going to remove 135, 155, and 175. We'll maintain 145 and 165. Yeah, I remember that.
Which is like the amendment we just defeated, but it adds 1 more tier and it's similar.
Well-
Representative Stores. No, this is good. This is the way you do this. This is good. Okay. Representative Store, you probably want to second that.
Second. I still want the math to work, so that it's just consistent if
So you were,
possible.
yeah, you were picking in between kind of the tiers, and this amendment just picks the tiers that we already have.
Just for mathematics, Mr. Chairman, just for mathematics' sake, it does, I think, work a little better just going to 165 of median income rather than 175. But I'm willing to work with Mr. Bear to see if we can kind of come up
So
with the right.
the motion you seconded then is to have 165 and 145 would be the only two remaining tiers, along with the current 125. Okay?
And then what are the specific refund numbers?
As, I think as it's written is what as it's in the bill.
Okay.
So this amendment would draw a line through Roman 2
5.
and draw a line through Roman 4, and then also draw a line through Roman 6. Correct? That's how I have it. Okay.
So may I just confirm, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
So at 125% of median income, you would get 100% of
Correct.
the refund. At 145% of the median income, you would get 65% of the
Correct.
refund. And at 165% of median income, you would get 25%.
Correct.
All right, very good. It's close.
Okay, everybody's clear? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion has been adopted. Nice teamwork there. Okay, job. All right. Any other amendments that you had on here? Any other? Okay,
There was one additional amendment that was provided by, where they wanted to add after county on page 5, line 14.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get that one? Line 14, they wanted to add, you should have it in your folder, but it says after the word county on line 14, add either individually or in partnership with other property taxing entities. That was provided by the County Commissioners Association. Do
yeah, it was.
you still want to add that?
I certainly don't, but
It's
maybe
not
a
up to
member
me.
wants to make that motion.
I'll move, no. Make it? I'll make that motion.
You say no. Well,
Has anybody seconded that?
I'll second.
so it was
It's been
Oakley
moved
and
and
Storer,
seconded.
okay.
Ladies, any discussion?
Tell me why.
Any discussion? Well, I think if county commissioners want, I think, really the only one they're gonna be able to probably partner with are, K-12 education. And I don't think that's it depends what county you're in, like recapture county, so then you reduce the recapture from Teton County, let's say. And I think there's a constitutional issue with that, frankly, and I don't want to go into that. So county commissioners can reduce property taxes today in your counties. Okay, any further discussion on that proposed amendment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, that motion's failed. Okay, any other motions? Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey.
Sure.
I crossed that one out and threw it away, but thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I didn't know.
No, that's perfect. Great. Okay, Vice Chair Oakley.
I'd make a motion to, I think I can do this, lay back House Bill 4 till lunch. Till our lunch meeting.
It's a motion to lay this back. There's a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Okay, is there, that's non-debatable. Okay. Any vote on, yeah, it's non-debatable. Yeah. Yeah, okay, all those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion has failed. Okay, so any other discussion on this bill? Okay. I think we're ready for the roll call. And is there a question on the bill? Wait for someone to call a question. Question being called on the bill. As amended, House Bill 4, Ms. Jeffrey, please call the roll.
So, Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock.
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer has cast an absentee vote of aye. and Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
9 ayes, do pass with amendments. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, committee. Okay. Let me just make a note on that bill. Okay. Next bill we have up before us is House Bill 45. I'd ask the sponsor to come up and sit with us and work as we finish working this bill. Okay, a lot of testimony. Appreciate everybody's testimony on this bill. Got a lot of notes all through it. Ms. Jeffrey, and I don't think we made really any amendments to this bill. Did we? Were there any amendments? Just refresh me. I don't think we did. We talked about some
We're on 4.
ideas and we gave homework to the sponsor.
Let's see.
There's your homework.
We are on.
Yeah,
I'm
and these
sorry.
there's about 4 concepts, I think, of homework. Is there 4 or 3 or 4 or 5 concepts? 4 concepts. I did remember that. Okay.
Yeah, we did have a.
Okay, so the sponsor is passing out, so we went to LSO Legal, got these drafted, and this is, I think, similar for Representative Locke's bill too, a lot of the same concepts, I think, we talked about. Okay. So I'd ask the sponsor then to take us through, everybody has this proposed amendment, the homework that we gave. Why don't you take us through kind of these 4 concepts and how they fit in the bill? Go ahead, Representative Grego.
Mr. Chairman, Eddie. So if you have the amendment in front of you, and I did email this to all of you yesterday, as well as to the director. Everybody have this. There you go. Just so everybody had the amendment overnight to look at, because it's fairly lengthy, but it's actually pretty simple. It's like you said, Mr. Chairman, it's actually four different amendments. The first one of substance is on line 22, page 1. Line 18. And that's the language that the good director proposed to us to make sure that it's very clear that this exemption rolls over year to year. And that's the language less any exemption authorized under this paragraph in the prior year. Sorry, page 1 of the amendment, line 18. Yep. Exactly, yes. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that
Oh,
one.
that's good.
I'm walking through the page numbers on the amendment.
Okay, and so that refers to page 2, line 18. We all had notes on that.
Yep. Okay, and then going down to line 22, there was a lot of discussion on what constitutes an acquisition, if you give the property to your spouse, if your spouse dies. And so I just went very broad on this, so it really covers everything. So the first one is, if you transfer property to your spouse, and that could be before or after death, that's not going to be considered acquisition, and so the exemption would remain in place. Second one is a transfer pursuant to a court order or a divorce, so the exemption would stay in place. Third one is a transfer of property to a trust. As long as you were the prior owner and you transfer it to your trust, that's going to qualify, exemption stays in place. Number 4, transfer, and I think Representative Storer talked about this a little bit ago, but a transfer of a property to a corporation, partnership, or LLC, also going to keep the exemption in place. And then the last one we gave
This is on page 2 of the amendment, flipping over
page 2 of the amendment, the last one is there's some rulemaking ability. So if for some reason the department think there's another transfer that should let the exemption stay in place, that's a catch-all phrase.
Okay,
But the top 4, I believe, cover all of the questions that we had from yesterday or whatever. All of my days are running together. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Whatever day we talked about this, I think that covers all the questions that were had, and LSO did a really good job on that.
yeah, that really is, and that all adds on to basically that Roman 2 on page, or paragraph. I just want to make sure where I read it into it. Okay, let me just take a second. Yeah, got it. Okay, I think I got it read in here. Okay, Very good. Okay, now we're on page 2 of your amendment, up on line 8, page 3, line 16 of the bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And so this is where we created a whole new really subsection within the proposed bill for land and including land within the exemption. And we'll get to that. It would not apply till 2025, but we'll get to that. That's at the end of the amendment. But so really what we did is recreate all of the language for the house only and put it into its own section for land. And so it's the language we just went through on what constitutes a transfer. And it just says if it's associated, portion of improved land associated with a single family residential structure. And then it has and again, it goes down subject to the 5%, same language.
Same language, basically, treat the land and the property the same.
Correct.
You work through A and B.
And then turning to the top of page 3, it defines improved land. And I think this is
And this
one
is the top of page 3.
of the amendment. Yes. And I think this is where we might, and I did not put a qualifier in there. And that's for the committee to decide. But improved land associated, as used in this paragraph, improved land associated with a single family residential structure means land that is improved by a structure intended for human habitation, including house, modular home, mobile home, townhouse, or condominium that is privately owned single family dwelling unit. And you guys just had a discussion about how large that should be, whether it should be 35 acres. And I personally I think that's too large. And I'll tell you why, is I think you're going to tie our assessors to a particular size. And what I'm thinking is, for example, ranch land. You have every homestead out in the middle of the country gets taxed as residential. At least, a lot of them are 1 acres, but most of them are 5 acres or less. I think they're going to be under pressure. There could be pressure put on by the language we're putting in this exemption to make it more than 1 acre or more than 5 acres. If you put 35 in there, I'm just a little bit worried about that. I'm just throwing that out there. I think 35 is too much. So either you don't put a number in there, or if you do, I would say you leave it smaller. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we may need to get Ms. Huxtable back up here, but is that the property owner or the assessor that determines that acreage for residential versus ranch land?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Grego.
That's the assessor. Right now, the assessor has the ability to make that determination, and it sort of depends. If your ranch has 10 houses on it, it's going to be a bigger area. If your ranch only has 1 or 2 buildings and it's all within a pretty small area, you can keep it small. But I think the good chairman of the Assessors Association could explain that better. But I'm just a little bit nervous that putting a bigger number in there might create some unintended consequences when they go to when they start carving things out. They're going to have to do math on whether, is it more beneficial to put the 35 acres as high as possible for the exemption purposes or not? I don't know the answer to that. I was just, as I was sitting there watching the discussion, I was thinking about that it might make our taxes actually go up depending on how that happens. Because if it stays in the ag, it's still going to be cheaper than if it falls into the exemption with the cap. Just a thought. So I don't know. Under current law, they don't have a directive on what constitutes the homestead. And so it might be better to put, in my opinion, it'd be better to put nothing in there than to put 35 and then leave the discretion with the assessors who are going to do the best they can. But
I think we put that in that previous bill because of statute already up to 35. That's, I think, was language, but I'm going to ask the assessor to come up and clarify as we work this, we want to make sure we get it right before we. Morning, Assessor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us to comment on this. So Representative Craigo is absolutely correct. It is up to the assessor to decide how to categorize that land on the account. but it is based on use. So again, the agricultural is based on use. There is direction within the rules of the Department of Revenue on what is a homestead. And up to an acre per habitable house unless otherwise determined. So if we determine that there is more than an acre per house, they have multiple buildings that they're using, a pool, things like that, we can go above an acre, but there is direction in the rules. And I think we felt that because this is 2025, there would be time to get this in the rules, to get some guidance from the department as to what that best associated land would be. I used the 35 acres before because that is in statute. You were talking about an exemption that was targeted, more of a limited number. This is pretty broad. 35 might be taking in more than what the anticipated goal was. Or consequences might have been. We asked the department to run a query of all residential land. He got that to me yesterday, but it's 190,000 lines, so I have not had time to even open it or do the analysis. What we were looking at was try to give you some statistics as to what that number might be to cover a majority, some quartile or percentage of the land. And unfortunately, sir, I just don't have that available yet. We're working on it, we just haven't got there. We too are concerned that 35 acres might be more than what the intended was in this exemption that is going to affect all property potentially, whereas the homestead was very targeted to an age application type process. So there is guidance for the homestead. That is true. There are rules that govern us on that. So, but it is ultimately will be the assessor's decision, of course, until the appeal period comes, and then we get to have the discussion with the
Okay, so
taxpayer.
I'd probably leave it as is. Okay, Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I was just going to say. So with this bill, we don't have the 35 acres in there. And so you think as written, this is the easiest to administer without adding any.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I do believe that because we do have the time, it's not effective till 2025 for us to do it. And you have the rules in this that the department can promulgate rules.
Thank you. Okay,
And just to clarify,
ahead,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Grego.
if it's all right, I wasn't trying to comment on the previous bill or the 35 acres in that. I meant for the purposes of this bill. I don't know if you really want to put a size limitation in there because it could be more, it could be less. I'm happy to leave that up with
Right, I think
to
we
the assessors.
keep do it like we've been doing it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think got a process. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, continue, Representative Craigle.
Okay, and then, so the next concept was the good treasurers asked us to add language in here that to make sure that the exemption amount would be placed on the tax bill as well. And that is on page 3 of the amendment, lines 30, 31, and 32.
So in this, I think we were asked by the Treasurers Association. So we've already got this in the bill on the assessment, same language, but now when you get your tax bill from the treasurer, it'll be on there. So very good. And I think that same is on Representative Locke's bill coming up too. So, okay, very good. Any members, any questions on this, on these, this proposed amendment? We haven't proposed it yet, but on these,
Mr. Chairman, one more, I just wanted to make sure that everybody saw at the very bottom of page 3, that's where it says that the act is only effective for the land beginning in 2025. The rest of it would become effective in 2024.
effective immediately,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, very good. Members, any questions of Representative Craigle? Okay, everybody, I think we've discussed for ad length on this side. Is there a motion on these amendments?
I'll move the amendment.
Okay, Representative Northrup has moved. Representative Oakley has seconded. Any discussion? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this will be up to you how you'd like me to do this. I can divide the amendment, I can bring a different, a later amendment.
I think divide, if you
Okay.
want to talk about a specific
Yes.
thing, I think it's probably easiest just to divide it out. That'd be good. Thank you.
I would like to divide into 2 parts the amendment, lines 1 through 28 and lines 32.
Tell us what page you're on.
Okay, page 1, lines 1 through 28. And line 32, still on page 1 till the end of the amendment. Page 3, line 40, or
Okay, so it's
Two. two divisions.
So
What I just described
repeat
is the
that
first division.
Repeat that for us again, so
Sure.
everybody can.
The first division will be, actually, we're going to talk about the first division, right? So I should,
Well, let's just tell us what the divisions
Okay.
are again.
1 through 28 on page 1.
Is division number 1.
And that division includes, same division, 32 through the end of the amendment.
Okay, so you want to, and so,
Division 2 will be page 1, lines 29 through 31.
gotcha, okay.
Maybe I should have started
Okay, I
with
think
that.
I think we got it. Okay, so really you're dividing out the part that
For the
number
divorce.
2 there.
Mhm.
Yeah, got it. Okay, great, thank you.
And,
Well, why don't
and
we,
with your leave, I'd like to explain why I'm doing that.
yeah, no, and if you want to talk about a division, you bet. Just go ahead, give us the whole thing and then we'll start.
So on Division 2, and this is being consistent with the previous bill where I mentioned social policy and in being addressed in tax policy. And here we are encouraging, I believe we're encouraging divorce and/or we could strike this and therefore discourage divorce. I guess that's really what I'm saying. By striking this, we're discouraging divorce. And so I know that may be a little contentious with some of my colleagues, but that's what I would like to do, is discourage divorce by striking lines 29, 30, and 31, and defeating division number 2.
Okay, Representative Oakley has comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it's punishing. I mean, it's literally saying if you get a divorce, you aren't going to get a tax exemption, which is unfair and inappropriate, I believe, for the government. Just as you said, that it's a social policy as far as punishing somebody for remarrying, and we got rid of that. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to decide that if you
Why-
get a divorce, that you
I'm
don't
gonna-
get the tax exemption.
Okay, I'm going to ask Representative Craigo. To me, I guess I read that, I think the first part is if there's death or something happens, I think, but let's explain that. It's number 2 is actually division 2, so explain that to make sure we all, the legal part of that. Go ahead, Representative Craigo. I'm going to ask you.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is language that's already in our statutes in other areas. For example, on subdivisions, family splits, for example. So it's just some language that we grabbed from other places in the statute. There are lots of reasons that a court may order property to be transferred. You get into a lawsuit, et cetera. What we're saying, we're trying to keep this tax exemption as broad as possible, and that's the purpose of the language. To be
So
honest with you, if
settlement-
you took out the word divorce, you're not going to solve the problem because it's still a court order. I mean,
That's what
unless
I-
you take out the entire thing, you're not going to solve the problem. And then I think if you do that, then you're punishing other people who have nothing to do with the divorce.
So that's my question then. Tell us about, some of these settlement agreements, examples are that a court could issue.
Oh, for example, let's say I buy a piece of property or a rental home with my best friend, and we decide to buy a rental home, and we're renting it out, and we own it as joint tenants, and we get into a spat. And right now, we're qualifying for the tax exemption, right? But we get into a spat, and we can't decide who is going to own the property. I bring a petition to the court. I say, I don't like my friend anymore, and I want this property divided. Well, if we take this out, once the property is divided, neither one of us could get the tax exemption. The court might say, hey, Barry, you get to have the property, but you have to pay your friend X amount of dollars. Or the court might say, friend, your ex-friend, you get the property, and Barry, you have to, you get the money. That's just one quick example where those people would no longer be enabled to get the tax exemption. We were just trying to cover all that.
Okay, any other discussion?
Question.
Well, hold on, we're still in discussion here. We're just discussing amendment here. Go ahead, Representative Bear.
I think that information is very helpful. So what I'd like to do with this division is leave the division in place, and I'm going to recommend an aye vote for the division, but I want to strike the words decree of divorce or. So it will still apply to a judicial separation.
I don't think, okay, and I think taking that out, I don't think hurts anything or changes anything in a divorce situation. I'm gonna ask the sponsor of the amendment, Representative Craigo, just to, go ahead.
So if you're asking me my policy advice on this,
Yeah.
I agree with Representative Oakley. We're punishing people. Now, could the court say, I mean, here's the argument we're going to have is by taking that out, someone's going to make the argument at some point, well, that was the legislature decided the divorces don't fall under this. So you're not going to get the tax exemption. I would prefer you leave it in. That was the whole point. We had this in fact, someone raised the very question of divorce. One of the members of public raised that question. And so that's why I made sure to get it in. I specifically asked for that language that would cover that. And so
Okay.
that's why it was in there.
Okay, I think, is everybody, any other questions or discussion? So we're on, and actually, let me just back up now. The amendment is divided. We are on Division 2, and
That's fine.
Representative Bear has made, you want to make that motion to strike those words, Representative Bear?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I want to strike those words. And again, I'll just say this is just a pro-family
Sure.
policy.
Okay, and you have that proposal. Is there a second on to strike those words? Okay, Representative Locke. Okay, any further discussion then? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, that has not been adopted. Okay, now let's just stay on Division 2, why this is divided. We're going to vote on each division. Any other discussion on Division 2? Okay, all those in favor of Division 2, please say aye. Now, we're voting whether to keep Division 2 in the bill.
Oh.
Although, let me be clear, I think,
Almost got it.
wow, okay. We're going to vote on Division 2, and then we're going to vote on Division 1. Okay, so Division 2, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, so that has been adopted. Now we're on Division 1, which is about 98% of the amendment. Okay, all those, any further discussion on Division 1? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's been adopted. Any further amendments on House Bill 45? The question has been called, so Ms. Jeffrey, if you could please call the roll on House Bill 45 as amended.
There we go. House Bill 45. Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strzok,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer has cast an absentee vote of aye, and Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
We have 9 aye votes, and it is passed as the do pass with amendments.
Okay, so I'll introduce that little bill and turn it over to the sponsor for the floor manage. Okay, now the next bill I have is property tax exemption for real property. Representative Locke, and I think you have some amendments.
So you should all.
Now, let me just say this, I need a motion to take it from the table.
So moved.
So moved. Seconded. Okay, so the bills before us, 127, property tax exemption, specified real property, similar, same situation, homework assignment for Representative Locke with some amendments. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you should all have a copy, and I'm sorry, mine's not as pretty. Do you have this copy that was handed out to you, everyone?
Let me
Sorry.
check here. We're going to pause for a minute.
It does. It has handwriting. What's that?
I get my, okay. Representative Locke, why don't you take us through your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know some of these amendments will be, the wording will be, of course, blown out quite a bit, but we've at least got them captured in this bill here. And so the first change is here on line 5, and basically right after the tax assessment schedule, it talks about, they inserted and statement of the tax due. Just trying to start that process of getting that in. I know that the previous bill's amendment had some better and more detailed wording that I just was not able to get drafted up, and I apologize for that.
Go ahead, take us through it.
The next amendment that is significant was the addition on page 2, line 15, where we added that verbiage, less any exemption granted under the paragraph in the prior year. And we changed the word taxable to assessed to make sure that we were consistent with the Department of Revenue's recommendation on that wording there. Okay, so that's right there in line 15. You'll see both the crossed out assessed as well as less any exemption granted under the paragraph in the prior year.
Okay,
Any questions? Is that, everybody see that okay? The next amendment that was adopted yesterday strikes lines 16, 17, and 18 up to the word 3. So the median household income index is removed there.
okay, yeah, well, I've got that,
Okay?
yeah.
And then you go down and on line, you'll see it kind of gets inserted on line 22. So this may be almost better broken out as a separate paragraph, but when they were drafting this, they drafted it inserted here where it talks about, and let me lead up to that. This paragraph shall be determined to be assessed value of the property in 2019. And then there's, or if acquired after 2019, the assessed value at the time of the acquisition. So this is this inserts that concept that the acquisition date in between, this starts covering those. So instead of it being 2019, if you purchase it in 2021, that's the acquisition date. And that allows the rates calculation then applies, and it would apply in the same fashion.
Okay.
And then the very bottom line there, line 23, there's another reference, really the end of 22, the last two words there, the rate of change, because this is where it goes into the calculation. In that 2019 clawback period, this is where the median household income, so the index is removed there too. So that covers the last two words in line 22, line 23, and then when you flip over to page 3, lines 1 and 2 up to the word 3. Okay. And then, as you mentioned, we've changed this to 2025. So the dates, if you look at the end of line 3, it's 2020 through 2024. And then right after line 3, or inserted right after line 3, this is, this next clause is designed to cover, so for example, let's say you had a property that it was vacant in 2019, okay? And the intent here is that if, let's say that in so you owned it in 2019, but then you built a house in 2021. I'm just going to use that as the example. So here it says, provided that if a new structure is added after 2019 and before January 1st, 2025, the additional value of the structure shall be included in the assessed value. Now, the intent of this wording, and I'll defer to the legal people that were writing this, that the intent here is that this structure, so you would be taxed on, you would have that cap applied to the land, of course, but if you built a house, that 3% cap is not now applied. That's new, if you will. That would be, that additional structure would now not be capped until the year after. Okay? And then finally, see, I'm going to have a couple more here. Then if you go down to line, after line 8, so let me look at that one a second. This is under the exemption paragraph B. Let's see. The exemption under this paragraph shall not be applied. Oh, this is some additional wording. This is some wording down here based on the exemption. So the exemption, yes. So the exemption under this paragraph shall not be applicable to an increase in value attributable to a new structure. So this deals with the outbuilding issue that had come up, right? So, because the concept here again was wouldn't be appropriate, for example, a person, if you remember in my bill, I had written it such that you can modify your house, but that's not included. But I thought it would be valuable for us to put in something here, because if you went and build a huge outbuilding structure, I thought that should be considered in the bill. So that's what this does. The exemption under this paragraph shall not be applicable to an increase in value attributable to a new structure added on the property during the calendar year. So this would allow the assessor to say, oh, you just added a $500,000 shop to the facility. That certainly would make sense to allow that in. Okay? And then finally, I think going to the last page, the text here probably will be more elegantly added with those additional paragraphs I think that we saw in the previous bill's amendments. But if you look at line 7 here, shall be included on the assessment schedule and on the statement of taxes due, but probably the legal will blow it out in more detail, I think, as it was called out by the previous, on that previous amendment, I think would be more appropriate. And then, of course, line 12 on page 4 is, as we discussed yesterday, the department thought this was only implementable in 2025. So, any questions?
Oh, it's good. Appreciate your homework. Turn my mic on. Yeah, appreciate your homework and your work on this. So, okay. So the bill is on the table before us, and I think you want to probably make a formal motion now on these amendments. We know the ones we've adopted already. Appreciate that, and you've got that clearly marked in there. So your new language.
I moved the amendments, the new language for our bill there. Thank you.
Seconded. Moved by Representative Locke, seconded by Representative Bear. Okay, on the amendments. Okay. Members, Any questions or any other work on these amendments? Representative Bear.
I'm going to move an amendment to this amendment. What I'd like to do, I'll just tell you the concept first. I want to change the enacting date back to 2024, but I want to make the clawback portion effective 2025. So this will still leave some complications for the department, the assessors, in that they're doing the commercial properties. They'll have to tackle that this year. But the clawback, they won't have to, they've got some time to work on that. So the amendment would be to apply an enacting clause for just lines 19, I'm sorry, page 2, line 19 through 23, and page 3, 1 through 5. So at the end of line 5, with the new language, adding this paragraph shall be in effect January 1 of 2025. And for some conforming language, on line 3, where it says 2024 now, that would be changed to 2025. Back to page 2, line 20, and I do believe this change needs to be made in the current amendment. We need to change 2024 at the beginning of line 20 to 2025. And then to finish the amendment out, page 4, line 12, returning 2025 now to 2024.
Is that a friendly
That would be the
amendment? Or do you want to make that, it's really up to you. You could say that's friendly, or we can vote on this amendment to the amendment. Or, really a couple ways to do this. We could vote on yours first and then come back with his, or he can amend yours and we can move forward.
I would prefer to vote on his amendment and then come back to my amendment.
So
Be the other way
not
around.
a friendly.
So it is not friendly. Okay, so he's made an amendment to the amendment, and so we're going to vote on that. Okay, to see if we add this to the amendment. Okay, that's been, it's moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Strzok. Okay, good. So we have a motion and a second to basically amend the amendment. Okay. Okay, discussion. Okay. So discussion, basically changing the date on a different piece of the bill, on the non-clawback part, on the 3%.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. Everybody good? Everybody understand? Okay, so we're voting on the amendment to the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no.
No.
No. Okay, I think that motion has failed. Okay, now we're back on the original amendment. Okay, Representative Locke, any other discussion or thoughts on this? Any members have any questions of Representative Locke?
Question.
Okay, seeing no questions for the sponsor. Okay, we're voting now on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That has been adopted. Okay, are there further amendments? And Ms. Jeffrey, I just want to check. Everybody good? I think we're good. Okay, very good. Any further amendments to the bill?
Just for
Okay.
discussion.
Further discussion on the bill? Okay, go ahead, Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just want to say, I appreciate what we're doing here, having this full discussion, which we certainly have done that. And I get the concept, but I guess I just wanted to say as far as this bill, when we say, I just heard the word used, complication, it's complicated for the assessors. And I think we just have to realize that we can't understate what we are asking. They told us they don't even believe that their system might not even be capable of doing this. This is extreme difficulty at best, if not impossible. Our assessors are not going to get more staff from their counties. We have to find a way to do property tax relief in a way that is also administrable and fair to our people at home. And so despite the concept that I appreciate, I just don't think we can do this. So I'll be a no vote.
Any other discussion? I'll go just down the line. Representative Northrup?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think this is a great interim subject. I'd like to hear more about the clawback, as we're using that term. I've really liked that idea. I'd like to get it back to where our taxes were at a decent rate, a different level, a decent level. But I think it's going to take more than just us working a bill and trying to implement it. So I'm a no also on the bill.
Okay, Representative Bear, and Representative Locke, I'll give you the last word. Okay, Representative Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, a question of the chairman. You know, if we were to advance this, I'm not sure how this would work with the bill that we previously passed. Then what would the body do with that, having two very similar bills? Maybe you could explain that. And a comment based on the vice chair's comments, I would say that we're at a time where we need to be looking out for the taxpayer. The taxpayer is the ones that are bringing this issue to us. And yeah, there's hard work to do these kind of things, but I think that as elected officials, it's important that we take on the challenge and we try to do the best we can for the taxpayer. And I think this is a very good effort for doing great things for the taxpayer. And so I like the bill. I'm just curious from the chairman how he thinks this will work with the other bill.
I think as you work it through the process, basically you have two cap bills, right? And then one has a clawback. That's really the difference. And so similar in some ways, the clawback is the biggest change, I think, as I see. But the body would decide that. I mean, it's not uncommon to have very similar ideas flowing at the same time. If this bill. And who knows? We all know the process. It's going to be a real logjam of bills to be heard. As we have the budget is going to take up more and more of our time. And of course, since we changed the Constitution 72, we spend an unbelievable amount of time taking these 2/3 votes. We could already pass out a dozen bills out of this committee and others. So time is going to get really short. And so I think we got to keep that in mind too, what we can kind of get done and because we got to get some work done. There's no doubt. And we've worked all interim on this stuff. And so we got to get it across the finish line. And as we all know, like Representative Lawley's bill, which is a good tool for a lot of people in Wyoming, there's more than one finish line. The House isn't the only finish line, as we all know, right? So this very tough process will begin again. So it's really hard to predict. Okay, comments on the bill, and then we're going to go to Representative Locke at the end. Did anybody else want to comment? I think Representative Storr and then Representative Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to echo Representative Oakley's comments. I also don't think it makes sense to include commercial real estate in putting a cap on that. That's not what the problem is. That's not the problem that we're trying to solve. So I don't think that makes sense. Wyoming has the lowest property tax on commercial property in the country. And I don't think it makes sense to lower that anymore. The WCCA has voted in opposition to this bill. There's a huge cost to both local communities and schools as a result of what this bill would do. And I just don't think it's justified. I also think it's very hard to implement. So I'll be a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. In respect to time, I also agree with Representative that spoke earlier, just that maybe moving this towards the interim is the right move. And, it's I just am going to be against it on that note, and I look forward to potentially working on it during the interim.
Representative Locke, why don't you bring us home?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say that one of my biggest issues with this bill was we need to do something, and we need to do something sooner rather than later that is truly relief. Because right now, what we don't have on the table is relief. We've got elements of reform, but I know in my case, I've got a large number of people that are hurting. And I'm not saying anything I don't think anybody else at this table can't say or doesn't say. So the key here is relief. Now, in terms of complexity, I understand there's complexity and probably amendment I should have brought. It just hit me that what I should have done is oversimplified or simplified significantly the clawback, which I certainly could, and I would be happy to do this in an amendment, because the simplification in my mind on that makes this much easier is to turn that. Hopefully that's okay if I go down this path, but I would do an amendment on this immediately, and I would turn it into let's just make it take that 3%, apply that 3% to the interim years in the way we've done it, and simplify it in that way. That way we at least get people some initial relief as fast as we could. So that's a recommendation that I would love to, an amendment I would be very friendly to move this forward, but at least this way it gets us some relief on the table for people, because that's the real key. If when you throw any cap on top of people who are already hurting very, very bad, to them, that's not relief. That's, my goodness, you slowed down the rate of death, right? A little tiny bit. And so we've got to do something there, and we've got to make a little bit of a change. And the fact that it's difficult, I think that moving into this relief, when you start trying to leave money in people's pockets, that first step is going to hurt. It is. But we've got to figure out how to, it will be painful. We've got to figure out how to do that as elegantly as possible, because we're trying to get on that glide path that keeps people in their homes, keeps them healthy. Yes, their property taxes will go up, but not at a rate that will kick them out. And at the same time, we can't cut the legs out from under government. So I would ask for your aye vote and consideration, and I will tell you that I'll gladly bring that simplification amendment to the floor. Thank you.
So we can call the roll on House Bill 127 as amended.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
No.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
No.
Representative Oakley,
No.
Representative Storer,
No.
Representative Strock.
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer has cast an absentee vote of no. Chairman Harshman,
No.
we have 6 no votes, 3 aye votes. The bill has a do pass fail.
Okay. Okay, the next bill, thank you, members, for your work on this. Next bill now is House Bill 134. And that is Representative Lawley is here. Now, this bill has not been presented yet. We haven't worked it. So we're going to go through our normal presentation. We'll take public comment on the bill and amendments and try to work the bill. Okay? Go ahead. Welcome to the committee, Representative Lawley. Appreciate your patience over the week with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. For 2 mornings in a row, I've been able to be with you, and I thank you for that. And I want to sincerely say this, that you guys have worked so hard during the interim. I've watched some of the interim meetings. I was here yesterday, and you guys have put in a lot of time, a lot of extra time, and I think that, I hope the voters appreciate that these are complex issues, and any suggestion that the legislature doesn't care or isn't willing to work hard, you have dispelled that very well, and I appreciate that. And I want to just begin, this, as you said, was a former House Bill 121 last session. It's exactly the same bill, and it passed this committee, it passed the House, it died in the Senate Revenue Committee, and many people asked me to bring it back. I was already going to do that, but I did get a lot of feedback about it. And I want to say this, that the why and the who is really important here, especially because you do know more of the details of the bill, and we can go through every one of those again. I'm happy to do that. But this is the part that I think is important, especially where we are in this problem. I don't know anyone in Wyoming that's happy with the property tax situation. I certainly wasn't. As a new legislator coming in, it was my number one focus. I went to our former assessor, who happened to be a friend of mine. I went to high school with her husband, and she graciously spent hours and hours with me, schooling me on the property tax system in Wyoming. And my question was, what could I do? What could we do? And as we worked through it, I had looked at these statutes. With my legal background, I'm familiar with looking at statutes, and I had come to this deferment statute and asked her why. Why is this not being used in the counties? And she said, Martha, most smaller counties do not have the resource to set this up, and that's the way the current statute was set up. And that was what gave birth to the idea. And I just went to LSO and said, could we lift it up? Could we lift it up out of the counties and give the responsibilities to administer it to the Department of Revenue? And that's how this bill began. But the who, as I listened to your interim and I heard person after person give heart-wrenching accounts of the actual circumstances that many voters find themselves in and many taxpayers find themselves in. I heard frequently about the older citizen who just is struggling, they have a limited income, and they just want to live out their life in the home they've lived in for many, many years. And so we heard it even yesterday from a gentleman who gave a very impassioned plea about a friend who I surmise based on the description was a widower, and she just wanted to live out her time in her home, but the property taxes and her limited income, her financial stresses was making that be a real threat to that possibility. And so that is who this bill is aimed at. Listen, it is not for everyone. This bill does not meet everyone's need. Wasn't even designed or envisioned to, but it meets someone's need, and those someones are important to me, and I believe they're important to you. And so I want you to think of it that way and look at this as part of a number of options, and just let homeowners decide who are in these kind of situations which is best for them. Some, for example, have suggested that a better option that we have in the marketplace is a reverse mortgage. Well, reverse mortgages are a helpful instrument for the right situation. But you don't have to do much research on reverse mortgages to find out that they are, of all the financial instruments related to private property, they're most expensive in their fees. Sometimes as much as $30,000 to $60,000 upfront cash money to enter into, depending on circumstances, prices of home, et cetera, to enter into a reverse mortgage. If the people I'm aiming at had that, they wouldn't be in my target, because they could do a reverse mortgage. But this is an option that I believe is very important for some people. And in Wyoming, we believe in letting people decide what's best for them. And I believe the view for you and I is what public policy should be out there, what options should be out there. So I really felt it was important, because when I hear the reverse mortgage thing, I'll be honest with you, it reminds me of Marie Antoinette when told about France, the people that were starving and struggling, and her solution was let them eat cake. Now, she wasn't saying that, she didn't care, I don't think. I think she just didn't understand that cake was not going to satisfy their bellies and their nutritional needs. And so I think we need to consider what is needed in these circumstances. And I believe this is a good option. And I believed it from the beginning, and I still believe in it. So the former House Bill 121 that you passed, now House Bill 134, is a property tax deferment. We already have that statute on the books. Again, but it was simply set up to be run through the counties. And I know Teton County has stood it up. I think Sheridan County for a short period of time stood it up. Someone told me they thought maybe another county or two were starting to stand it up with all the pressure right now, which is important, the fact the pressure people are under. But I want to suggest to you that this tool is not just for the current pressure. We could come up with perfect solutions to fix and reform the property tax situation and still have people in this target area that have other types of financial stresses that come with that time of life that would still need this option. So again, I just say that that's what the option does. The bill basically, and we can walk through it if you like, the bill, pardon, you want to? Okay, then.
Bill, just page by page.
Perfect.
Tell us the deal. Okay,
All right.
Glenn, thank you.
Okay, you have in front of you House Bill 134, and the first page simply, again, is the title page and the description of what statute we're amending, which is 3913, let me get it right here. 107, starts at 107 and sections in on 107. And so what we do on page 2 is, like any exemption, and again, this is already in the current statute, but any exemption is you file an affidavit demonstrating your qualifications, because there are several ways that a person qualifies. And I've not changed those ways, but I have added a way which has to do with veterans with compensatory disabilities would also be an automatic qualification. You see there on page 2, lines 10 through the end of the page, line 23, that involves a primary residence only. Again, this one does have a limitation of not 30 acres. I know that's been discussed in other bills, but this included that already. And then the deferment is up to half of the taxes owed. Qualify for a deferment. And you can qualify for deferments each year you could apply. This has again, the Department of Revenue promulgating rules and regulations of how they begin to process and create the application. You see some language deleted on page 3, and this is about really the promulgation of rules by the county, because we're pulling it up. I think that this would envision counties that could keep, if they wanted to do their own programs, kind of like the refund program. It doesn't necessarily, I don't think, I recall we set up where it doesn't, but it doesn't require them to. So they have an option. They can do their own too. They can also do the state program. So now at the bottom of page 3, you see that any part of the payment of the tax that's deferred will be secured by a tax lien that in this case would be held by the state under my proposed amendments to the statute. And for those that are not familiar with a deferment is simply an agreement to pay the tax at a later date that you enter into with the taxing authority. And so moving to page 4, it says, unless declared due earlier, it gives specific ways that is triggered for the deferment to be paid. And they're in there. I know there's been some discussion about, in several of your bills, about language concerning like a surviving spouse, et cetera. This would be a place, if you wanted, you could basically interject the same language that Representative Crago gave you for the last bill, which I have here. But this would be where you would insert it if you wanted to make some exceptions there. I'm not saying you do or don't, but this is where that would be done. And I do have a copy of his amendment, but this is where it would be put in there. On page 4 at the bottom, interest shall accrue on the deferred amount, and that interest rate that's in here turns out to be about 3.3% or somewhere around 3.5 or above percent. There is no prepayment penalty, so if someone's situation improves financially, they can come in and just simply pay the tax that was deferred and the lien is taken off, and there's no penalty for doing that. There's a provision here on page 5, line 11, that calls for the program to be advertised. So people are aware of the program. And I think this is really important. I think it's important, especially as we move it up. It would be advertised within the counties, and people that need it would be aware it's available. On page 5, line 17 is a backfill provision. Since we're now moving it up to the state level, it requires the state to backfill to the county, and it requires that payment to be made by the end of December of that year that the tax was deferred, so that they can have that revenue available. Let's see, on page 6, way we set this up is so when taxes are deferred and then the revenue department backfills and holds the lien, when that lien is satisfied and that's paid, what happens is that money will go into a special account that this provision here calls to be created with revenue, and kind of think of it like this, a little bit of a revolving fund. So that will then fund other deferments later. So we're just we set up a sort of a seed account. I think it's around $200,000, which was based on some estimates of a Department of Revenue. And then when deferments are, the money's paid out to counties when a deferment is given. When those deferments are paid off, that money goes into this account and it just keeps self-funding it for future deferments by the department. Then you go down to page 6, line 16. This has to do with if there's a mortgage on the property. And I can envision a situation where there's a mortgage on a property and there's very little to be paid, and the one holding that mortgage might agree to something like this, but in many cases, this is not going to come into play. It requires notice, signing of the affidavit by the mortgage holder, which is really appropriate so everyone knows what's going on. But again, likely, there's only a few situations I can envision where if there's a mortgage holder that they would agree to this, but there would be a few. But that's why the target audience really has to do more with people, older people who have paid off their home maybe several years ago and just want to stay in it. So on page 7, we see some record keeping for the department. Let's see. Now we're going to get into, there is one income test. There's several ways you can qualify for the deferment, which were, again, all these were already in statute. They were, so one of them has to do with a means test, and you can see that in, starting in line 17 of page 7. The next way a taxpayer can qualify is over the age of 62. The other one is a person with a disability determined by Social Security, and then an applicant that purchased the property at least 10 years prior to the beginning of the tax year that he is applying for the deferral. And then I have added, it was an amendment on page 9, line 1 through 4, again, for a disabled vet with a compensatory service-related disability can qualify. And again, there's the one means test, but the other tests don't have means of, there are categories that do not require they have to meet the means test. The means test is just one of the list of ways you can qualify. Then we move on, page 9, section 3 is the appropriations from the general fund to the department, which is to create a fund to actually do the deferrals and make the, backfill that money to the counties. And then we go on to page 10, and it has a provision for previous deferrals that may have been offered. Again, that would be primarily it might be one in Sheridan County because they had it for a while. Teton County has deferrals they already have in place. And this just says that it doesn't alter those deferrals. So however they were agreed to, however they were done under a previous statute before it was amended by the counties would stay in place. And let's see, the repealer you'll see there on page 10 or 11, excuse me, lines 8 and 9. So that kind of covers the essence of the bill. I would be happy to answer questions.
Okay, members, questions of the sponsor? I just have one to start on page 7. Just first question is the 250% of federal poverty level for a household of 4. What is that number? I mean, I know it's different per county, but let's just give us an example what you think that is.
Hang on. You know,
Property.
I had that number. Let me look back.
78.
I think it's around $75,000.
Anybody in here know that number?
Close to
Dave
78,
Northrup does.
What it,
75, 78.
75, 78,000.
that's what I thought, about
income level.
75,000, that's what I said. So, yes, sorry, I had that number before, but
Okay, very good. And then my other question was on page 2, line 18, and can only defer half of the tax.
that's how it was currently set up.
How it's currently set up. I can see. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, members, those are my couple questions. Any other questions? Yeah, Representative Locke, you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know we've been over this ground before, but question for you on, I know there's some counties doing this, but only a handful, 1 or 2. Is that right? I think you might have even said in your presentation. And then the question is it used? Has it been used? Do we have any information on that?
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Locke, Teton County has had the longest stand-up of it, and perhaps Representative Byron can perhaps provide some more insight, but my understanding is it is used, but probably the thing you would want to know more is that it's being used more increasingly with the pressures that we're under right now. And I was told that some counties either have or are thinking about standing it up. But we have this disparity in our counties. You guys heard about it yesterday morning, that some counties simply do not have the resources to do it. So that is one of my concerns, honestly. It's almost like an equal protection type situation of the way it's created and the realities of some of our counties and their limitations in terms of staffing to set it up and to run the program creates an equal protection. So if you live in Teton County, you get the benefit of this. But if you live in Washakie County, unless the legislature passes this bill, we do not have an option for deferment.
Yeah.
And that is troubling to me constitutionally, that it's kind of, it creates we don't have equal protection for all of our citizens because we know the reality. You can say, well, but they can set it up. But that ignores the reality. And if there's one thing that we have come to understand, I think clearly, maybe more than we did, and maybe not, depending on who you are, but that we do have to deal with reality, not just that's sort of, well, they
Okay.
could have done that.
More questions? Did you get that? Any other questions? Okay, do you have a question, Representative Oakley?
Not a question, I just got the answer to it.
Okay, let me just, it's 78,000? Is that number, or is that what you said?
That, but just that it is only in Teton and 3 people are using it, that's it. So it just hasn't worked, I guess, is, on a county by
Well,
county
it's
level.
78,000 income. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, it's just not gonna be many people. Or less, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Representative Byron has a question.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Yeah, I think the number has obviously ticked up a little bit, but more importantly, the discussion when this bill did not make it out of the Senate side of things last year, through the interim and through the summer, many constituents of mine talked about it. And with respect to time, I would love to talk more, and maybe it's appropriate later, but if anyone's gone down the rabbit hole of other options, such as reverse mortgages, they are, with all due respect to the banking industry, very predatory and can cost a lot of money. There happens to be a constituent, not a constituent of mine, but my mother who went down that rabbit hole, and to go in, as someone who's divorced and trying to get retired up there in Teton County that would qualify for this. It was tens of thousands of dollars to apply for a reverse mortgage that she would never see again. So I was in support of this last year, and although maybe Representative Oakley mentioned there's only 3. I mean, it's hard to get when people don't know about it and we're not pushing it. I think that statistic is a bit flawed, and I think many people would benefit statewide from this.
Okay, just another question I had on page 5, lines 4 through 9. What is that now? 10-year treasury, and I don't even know, is it 6%, 7% now?
The
Go ahead.
calculation I did last year, and I honestly, I haven't done it for this year, but it was at 3.53 last year at that percent. But it's probably closer to
It's
4.
more, I think, now, but somebody can look that up. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, members? We're going to turn this over to public. We're going to take public comment. Your last closing remarks?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Chairman Harshman, thank you so much. And I just want to respond to this issue of only 3 in Teton County. With all due respect to Teton County, they are not in many ways some of the target audience. Some of them are, but like some of these other counties, my county has a number of people that if we could stand it up, which we don't have the ability to, this could be a good option for them. And so I think it's a little bit of a skewing thing to just, since it's just in Teton, to look at what they're doing and project that out to some of these other counties that have completely different economic structures. And
Okay.
but thank you for your
Very
consideration.
good. And we can work some amendments on it too, I think. So, okay, we're going to open this up. Public comment. Any Yeah, Department of Revenue, elected officials, if we have 3 seats there, if you could fill those up, sure appreciate it. We'll keep moving. Go ahead. Good morning, introduce yourself, who you represent.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ken Giel, Administrator of the Property Tax Division, Department of Revenue. Brenda Henson, Director Henson, apologizes that she can't be with you this morning. She had another engagement, but she will be with you this afternoon. I did quite a bit of research, and you'll notice that on the fiscal note, a lot of research on other states that have deferral programs. I found there were 24, 25 states that had deferral programs. The use is pretty low across the country. The highest I found was on the West Coast, about 10% were using it. And the state to the south of us right here, out of all their citizens, 1,181 folks were using this deferral program. So for the fiscal note, I estimated around 500 for Wyoming once it was propped up at the state. The director did want you to know we didn't look into any programming for this. We felt that we could probably do this independently on spreadsheets and that sort of thing. So we didn't ask for any programming costs or anything like that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I stand for questions.
Any questions? Go ahead. Anybody? Questions? You have, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gill, thank you for being here. I did have some questions about the fiscal note. And I appreciate your giving us the information about how many states, the low amount of utilization. But then when you share the Colorado information with us, it kind of makes me wonder, Colorado has 10 times our population. And then you're calculating a little less than 50% of Colorado's participation. How did you come up with that number of 500?
Go ahead, Mr. Guy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear, I just estimated, really honestly. I said maybe 500 folks would use it. And I was basing on what has been used already. Last year, when we did the fiscal note for it, we looked at Teton County and that stat, their population versus how many were using it, and didn't think that was a very appropriate number. So really, I just estimated, Representative.
Follow up?
Just asking you this, I just a little calculation that 10% of that bumped it up a little bit, just to give it some slack, but that brings us down to a fiscal note of $20,000 statewide for about 120 people. Would you say that's a good estimate as well?
Mr. Chairman, I think your estimate is as good as mine is for sure.
Okay, very good. What about, if other states you said you looked at, I look at this 120, 250% of poverty level, 78,000. Other states probably have higher number than that, I'd think. Or are they all about this kind of target?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't look at the income levels too closely, but their programs were very similar to this. Had a means test, veteran, had a veteran qualification, age qualification. So I didn't really look at the income piece of it. I apologize.
We've got the program that's wildly popular, 10,000, nearly, 9,000 some applicants last year for the refund program, and that's 125%. Of median county income.
Yeah.
Or median state income, whichever is higher. I'm just thinking, why wouldn't we mirror something like that? What's the problem with raising that to a mirror like that? Might become too wildly popular.
Mr. Chairman, that would be totally up to the legislature to change that if they wished, for sure.
That'd probably be a bigger fiscal note.
It might be,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
I'm seeing some heads nod out there. Okay, any other discussion? Members, any other discussion, questions? Okay, thank you for being here this morning. Okay, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Melissa Shingle, Teton County Assessor. As the only county administering the plan currently, I would just like to share a few of my experiences over the years. For instance, this year I had 6 applications total. 2 of them had mortgages, so they could not get signed off by the mortgagor. So those dropped out. The other one dropped out voluntarily, which has happened in the past once their income and information is needed. They don't, some people don't feel comfortable sharing that. But really, the other issue is, the lien being placed on the property is most unpopular. It's a generation of folks that are very proud. They've paid off their homes, and I think the thought of a lien on their home is upsetting in a way. That being said, the 3 remaining applicants were, longtime homeowners, and taxes have increased exponentially. And they have used the program. I have one gentleman who's utilized it twice. The other issue I have heard is that it only defers up to 1/2, and it's the second half. So right away, they've got to come up with that first half portion. So I don't mean to discourage the bill itself. I think it could open it up to more applicants. I do worry that maybe sending it to the state could have the opposite effect in some situations, because I think some people dealing with a state agency, this is speculative, of course, but my people come in, they need help, we print out forms for them. Not to say that the DOR would not do that, but I would just encourage them to be very helpful with those taxpayers.
Appreciate that. And I guess I thought it would be different, I have to go into my county treasurer. I've known him for years, hat in hand, and say, hey, so people got to kind of, you got to go in and say, hey, I need this. Whereas with a state thing, you don't. There's a little more. So I guess that's what I was thinking, just the opposite of that, maybe.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think in some communities, this may be very good. So I don't think I think it's a positive move to try to include more folks. But I just, they will need a little help along the way.
what would you think? On page 2, it's just half of the tax. You have a problem? I think, like you think of your county, do like 80% of the tax or 100% of the tax. Really, you're putting a lien on you're really taking your kids' inheritance away a little bit,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And again, I
off
think
your
that's
asset.
one reason why it's not very popular. But one gentleman in particular, he's in his 80s, his taxes are $24,000 a year. So to come up with even $12,000 is really difficult right off the gate. So.
Now, he would also qualify under this, he'd qualify for the refund program, certainly.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
And
He did qualify for the refund.
Both refund programs, probably. So did he get all of his taxes paid, pretty much?
Yes.
Yeah, so he didn't have to. Okay, very good. Question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just along those lines, so I don't have to figure it out. So 24,000 a year, what does that equate to? What's the value of that property that he owns?
I believe it's around 4 million, 4.5.
So he didn't have to use the program because of the refund programs.
Interestingly, Mr. Chairman, that was a question that was raised by our county treasurer, because if the property is under deferral, is the refund applicable? And if it's applicable, there's nothing to say that it must be paid to the deferral.
Oh,
So the deferral still exists, but perhaps that individual has received a large refund as well.
yeah. Interesting. Okay. Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up to that discussion, so he would have been eligible for both the county and the state refund program, which would total around $8,400 for Teton County. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So he still would have had to pay 15,000 X.
Correct.
Yeah.
Of property
Hey,
tax.
let's all
And-
work through the chair now.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
My apologies.
okay. Any other questions? Representative Barrett's question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Assessor Schinkel, for being here. you know, it appears, and I just want to get real clear from you, that this person and probably all three of these people engaged in this program are not getting any better as far as getting out of the deferral program. Is that a proper statement to make about this
Go ahead,
situation?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear, that's correct. It's not, you know, it is helping them for certain, but it is delaying the inevitable.
Okay, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Follow up. So just to be clear, you know, they're getting to stay in their home because of the deferral program. We're delaying their being evicted based on these liens, but eventually the county or the state is going to own that home. Is that an accurate statement?
Go ahead, Ms. Schenkel.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear, eventually, yes, if those monies were not paid, once the home was sold, then yes.
They have the first lien,
Yes,
like a banker. I mean, they'd be paid.
Mr.
on
Chairman,
sale.
yes, it is a first place lien, which is exactly why many mortgage companies will not sign off.
Right. No, this is really for folks who have their home paid off. Okay, very good. Any other? Representative Byron.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Assessor Schenkel, you know, we're talking a lot in these different bills about, you know, the property tax bill, and I'm wondering if you or your association can comment, because I think it applies to this bill. You know, there's lots of line items on these property tax bills. One specifically, one I have concerns about is the improvement service districts that are in place. So do you think there's an opportunity for improvement here if we could kind of pull out improvement service districts from this tax bill, or do you have any thoughts on the issues there? And for example, you know, you might have someone paying $10,000 on a property owner on property tax, but there's also $2,000 on that bill for their ISD, which covers their road, their water, potential other things. So if you have any comments on that, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Byron, you're exactly correct. Currently, with the refund and the deferral, there is no language to exclude any special district fees. So to give you the same example, my gentleman with the $24,000 tax bill, part of that, roughly, I believe, you know, $2,500, $3,000 roughly, is attributed to the special district fee. And so currently, there's no provision to exclude that. And I think that would be a good thing, possibly, to exclude those special district fees, as those are separate from property tax.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Sounds like I have some homework, don't you think?
You know, I think as we head towards the gavel in period, we might have a little homework for the sponsor, and so we're going to get our homework organized, but we want to make sure public has a chance to comment on this bill, because our time is really limited as we move into early next week and finish up today. Okay. Any
Mr.
other-
Chairman, could I add one more thing?
Sure, sure.
I did visit with Mr. Riemann, and just for information purposes, because the current statute allows the median plus the cost of living index as established through the Wyoming Department of Economic Analysis, the current income threshold in Teton County, I believe, is about $162,000. So it does capture a good bit of taxpayers.
Okay, so let me ask you that is, you know, I've written some notes on there. Do you think that's the way that's written on page 7? I mean, if you were, any suggestion of that, or just leave it alone? I've got some notes on it.
Yeah, may I see it? Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, you don't
I'm
have.
sorry.
Federal poverty level of 4 is adjusted by
Page 7.
comparative cost of living index.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's how it currently reads. I think that's fine. I think it establishes a good price, particularly in Teton County with our cost of living index, but certainly for others.
So that amount then, 162,000, that's higher than your 100, Well, 125% and Teton's 154, so it's real similar. I was kind of looking at what we've done on the other program. It's real similar there.
Very similar.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the good assessor? Okay, thank you for being here. Go ahead, Mr. Reeman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremy Reeman on behalf of the County Commissioners Association. We are supportive of this work, and I just wanted to provide a couple of things. One, yes, Teton County currently operates this program. Historically, Sheridan County did have a program, but had no applicants over time, and so they let that fall by the wayside. It does require counties to go to the Department of Revenue and get approval of their approach before they can implement it. So that is historically been one of the hangups. I would suggest there are also a lot of levers you can pull in this, and that's where I've heard other issues from counties. You heard one of those in relationship to the lien. If you look at page 2 of the bill in lines 18 through 23, it puts the state of Wyoming as the primary lien holder there, which of course, when you go to your mortgage company, they're going to say, no way. You have the power, if you wanted to establish the state as a secondary lien holder. And then perhaps in that case, a mortgage company would allow that to happen. I bring that up because we did something very similar when we were going through the mineral ad valorem discussion. So we can pick our position. So that might be one place that you look at here. Mr. Chairman, another place that I had some conversation with my members about is that on page, and I apologize, I'm going to flip back up, page 2 of the bill, in that provision, the maximum deferral is 50% of the value of that particular property. I'm not saying you should go above that, but you could. That's certainly within your discretion. If you go to provision D of the bill, and that starts on page 4, it has in there the compounded per annum percentage rate. You could pull that lever and move that around or give some discretion to the rulemaking process. Mr. Chairman, let's see, you've already talked a lot about the eligibility requirements of income and such. That is another place. So I just wanted to offer to you, there are other levers that you could pull in here and be able to perhaps draw more people into the program. We're supportive. I know it's a change from county to the state. You could leave it as a county. You could keep the county option still there and then also offer the state option if you wanted to. I know that's not what this bill does, but you could leave both in place like we do for the refund program. But I just wanted to offer those comments as I looked at this issue over the course of the last year.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Reeman? Okay, thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Okay, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mark Cowan, Sweetwater County Treasurer. Just two small things on this bill from our perspective. The 10-year Treasury, just so you know, is trading at about 4 1/4, a little under 4 1/4, so about 6 3/4 on this note. The only other question I have would be on the lien itself when it comes due. It says that after 50%, the note would become immediately due and payable. Who would make that demand? And then if the note wasn't paid, who's going to go collect that? Is that going to be the treasurers in the county, or is the state going to go after the properties and try and collect that lien? And I apologize, I don't have the paper, so I don't have which page you're on, but I can tell you it is.
On page 4.
4, line like 19, 18. 19.
Yeah. Okay. Transfer of the property, which comes first, yeah. Okay. Yeah, a question by the vice chair. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I appreciate that comment. Then, so basically, we need to flesh out some processes, if you will. Just saying it's due and payables, fine and dandy, but who does it when those things need specified?
Yes, exactly.
Any specific, other than giving us that commentary, any suggestions or?
That's going to be a
Go
tough
ahead,
one,
work through
right?
the chair.
Yeah. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sorry.
I appreciate that. And Representative Oakley, this is only my second time testifying, so I appreciate that.
Oh, you're doing great. That's-
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have a recommendation. Obviously, at the county level, we're going to know the properties better. I do see some difficulty in tracking the 50%. I don't know if we're going to be working with the assessors to try and figure out when they've actually achieved that 50% of value, and then at what point the lien is actually held by the state. And so is the state going to ask us, the county, to execute that lien and then foreclose on the property? Are we going to foreclose? Are we going to just extend the lien? So I don't really have the rulemaking. I would suggest that there needs to be some stuff hammered out here to do that right.
Well, the bill says the department,
Yes,
may declare.
yes, correct.
By written order. Representative Lawley, briefly, you have a comment on?
Well, this was discussed the first time the bill was brought at some length. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And what was talked about when Director Henson was here was that would be worked out in rulemaking, and there would be some coordination between the county assessor's offices and valuations and things like that, but that they would coordinate. But as the lien holder, whether it's a first or secondary, that's a great thought about putting it secondary, but that they would be in charge of that execution. They have the legal right to the lien and the money's paid to them. But we did talk last time, and that was definitely something that would be worked out in rulemaking.
Very good. Thank you for that. Okay, anything else? Anything else we need to, Treasurer, anything else?
Not that
Your
I can
thoughts?
see. Thank you. I think that the idea is good. I do feel like this is just, extending the pain. It's not really a property tax relief issue because we're not providing any relief. Somebody's going to have to pay the taxes eventually, right? And so I feel like it's helpful in the right situation, and I think that's why very few people use it,
Very good. Thank you. Okay, and if you're going to testify, please come on up. Here's our time, 9:47. So let's try to be really brief and speedy, and then we're going to.
Mr. Chairman, a couple quick thoughts for you. First, for those reliant on Social Security income, the committee ought to note that when there is a cost of living adjustment, they don't get the full adjustment because there is a takeoff for Medicare costs. So not so long ago, we had an 8% cost of living adjustment. The Social Security recipients only received like 5 or 6% of that on their income, even though they're taxed on it. They're taxed on 85% of Social Security income. Second, there's a quirk in the refund program that you talked about earlier, where people have to pay the tax and then a few months later get the refund. And some people have a problem paying the tax initially. And I offer the thought that under the deferral thing, you might defer that tax to be made good when the refund comes. Subject to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Winnie. Appreciate it. Hey, Mr.
Tom Laycock, AARP Wyoming. Just a few quick comments. We're supportive of the concept, supportive of the bill. This isn't specifically property tax relief. We've talked about those bills that would provide that this morning. But in the right situation, this could be very important to folks. Two other quick points to make. There was that question about mortgage and sort of, do you want to be first in line, second in line? Through the conversation about property tax over the course of the last 2 years, we've had a lot of members who have called in and said, here's where I'm at. They've overshared. The presence of a mortgage was more common than I would have thought among that particular population. So just something to consider. Last thing I was going to say is that with any new programming or any changes like this, it's important to get the word out. Consider us a partner in that. Obviously, we do a pretty good job reaching out to our members, including a newsletter that goes to 50,000 homes a couple times a year. So we're happy to include any new details of any of that in the newsletter. Thanks.
Very good. Any questions, Mr. Laycock? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else would like to testify on this bill? Okay, if I'd ask the sponsor to come up, do we have here's what we got, 10 minutes. So we can take a motion on this bill and start working it if we'd like. Could lay it back. We could start working it, and if we have amendments, and then we can pause and resume this work on noon, and then if there's some homework that we need to assign the sponsor or some of us. Okay, so it's been moved by Representative Oakley, seconded by Representative Northrup. Okay, so members, let's start working through the bill. Ask the sponsor here as we work through it, so you can ask for clarifications from the sponsor. Members, any amendments on page 1? I'll flip over to page 2 now. Go ahead, Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am thinking, and I'd like to discuss, I'll go ahead and move it, but it says not to exceed half, basically to delete that and not limit it to half.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Representative Byron. Okay, so this is on
Page, it would be
Page two.
Page 2, line 17 and 18, striking, starting with the word not, and ending on line 18, ending with of.
Okay. Okay, so the deferral of the collection of any real estate, ad valorem owned. Okay. Any, Representative Storer?
This question, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if that would address Mr. Winnie's concept of being able to apply it to the first half of taxes due. You agree?
I think it would. I think it solves that, Brian. That's what I was. Okay. Any further discussion? Question, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's been adopted. Ms. Jeffrey, you guys have that? You're good? Okay, thank you. Okay, any other amendments on page 2? Moving over to page 3. You have the lien issue on the bottom of page 3.
Where does it say first? Priority?
In favor of the state is the key word.
Yeah, I guess the question is,
Yeah, priority over any other lien. Go ahead. You have a question, Representative Oakley.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm going to make a motion here to change that. I guess what I don't know if we need to get help or just do a conceptual. I don't have any idea the language. So, because it's very, I'm sure, like a term of art with priority over any other lien, what the language is for it to be a second. To be the second priority. Does anybody know?
Go ahead, Representative Lawley.
Well, my response would be that, I mean, you're on to, Representative Oakley, on to something that if it's a tax lien, it legally has priority. But we could, I think, say a tax lien, we're kind of basically changing the lien law by, or making an exception in it, that's a tax lien that you would give second priority to, where we could maybe, right, I'll talk to LSO, but where we just agree to defer to any existing mortgage. That might be a better way to say it, still a tax lien, but with the, and I don't know if we want to do this, but we could leave that issue, give permission for that, but be left to the discretion. Because here is what you would run into, the size of the mortgage. If it's substantial, then you're going to run out of runway for the usefulness of this. And I might just suggest that we consider that a matter of discretion with the department as they look at
Agree.
the size of the
10,000,
mortgage.
That's different knowing
Yeah.
200,000
Yes.
or whatever, so.
So again.
So do we want to, as a homework assignment, we can deal with that? Do you want to get the correct language, or do you think we can wordsmith that now and work it
Well,
later?
I think with the time, I would be happy to work with LSO on it, but what I think I need is the consensus that everyone would be okay with giving the department discretion to whether we're a first
So
or
on
a
the
second.
concept amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. So does anybody want to propose a concept amendment on that? Go ahead, Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So conceptually, I like the combination thereof, which is permissive, not a shall, as far as any of it goes, I guess, really. And then, and the discretion to take second priority or to defer to the mortgage.
Second.
Okay, motion seconded. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion's been adopted. We'll work, Ms. Jeffrey, get that language. Okay, flipping over to page 4. Okay, you know, there's some language here where, you know, department finds anytime the total tax verdict exceeds half the fair market. I'm on line 14, 15, 16. So there's a protection there on page 4.
Yes.
Okay, how about the interest rate on this deferral on page 5? It's currently the 10-year, it's existing language. We're testimony, it's about 4.5% right now. Okay, anybody, everybody? Okay, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I'm going back to page 4. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Just real quickly, that the verbiage down there, and you hit on it down there in the lines, I think it's 12 through roughly 16-ish, and where it talks about if the department finds at any time the total tax deferred exceeds 1/2, we had, obviously, we were going to remove that from the other point. How does that affect this? Because now, is it removed here? What does the department have to trigger, if you will, an event?
So my
I'm not
understanding
sure.
is the previous was just the yearly tax amount from 50% to the full amount. So, but this is the accrued amount. And if it equals half of the market of the home, so if you have a home worth 100,000, you can only defer over time up to 50,000. It's going to be your total deferral. That's how I understand it. Anybody want to correct me on that? Representative Lawley, correct me?
Mr. Chairman, you're correct.
Okay.
There are two different issues. That one was amount per year could be deferred, and the other is kind of a trigger to protect against a drastic change in the property values and to leave some exposure. But even that could be different. Half is what's in there, but it could be
Yeah,
different.
that could be changed. I think half is pretty, you know, but half would, defer taxes for a long time, you know.
I don't,
I think it's probably all right. It's been there. Okay, Representative Oakley.
So I don't know that I have a motion on this one, but what we had talked about at the end of that, lines 18, 19, as far as somehow either clarifying or referring to something that we need more process or clarification on the if it's the deferred taxes are immediately due and payable. I don't even know how to get there, to be honest. Anybody got some ideas for me?
I think it can be done. I think a lot of this can be done by rules. I think whether it's sold, transferred, you know, whatever, person passes away, all those things, I think, can be handled probably. I'm looking at the department through rules, I think, where we don't have to write every possibility down into the green books. Okay, and then I'm going over to page 5. Any amendments? Members, any amendments on 5?
Do you want to touch the rate at all?
You know, initially I was thinking about that rate, but the testimony from the treasurer was 4.5% right now. I don't think that's too onerous. Probably if it was 10, that'd be a different thing, I think, but, okay, the advertisement, the backfill. Okay, flipping over to page 6. Anything else on 6? And then you flip over to page 7. I initially wrote in some language, you know, I was going to use the same language as we use in the refund program, but it's pretty similar, actually, is what I learned through testimony. The amounts and adjusted by that cost of living index for the county where the property's at. Does everybody want to stay with that then? And then it sounds like it's pretty similar to the 125 median that we've used in our other bill. Okay, flipping over to page 8. I don't think there's These are the folks who are going to be eligible. Page 9. Add a disabled veteran to that existing statute. 10 years versus 62. Okay, and the income levels. And then the appropriation. And we've moved this to the full amount. I think the conversation, Mr. Guile and Representative Baer, it's probably all right, that amount, even with that. Okay, any other, we have one little homework assignment. Did we adopt that, or we're gonna wait on that,
Which one?
on that amendment we did adopt that amendment, that concept. So
Yes.
we've amended this bill. Are there any other amendments? Okay, members, what's your pleasure on House Bill 134? We could lay it back and come back and vote on it, or we can.
Let's vote.
Okay, I heard a question called. So question being called, we are now voting on House Bill 134 as amended. Ms. Jeffrey, please call the roll.
Representative Baer,
No.
Representative Byron,
Yes.
Representative Locke,
No.
Representative Northrup,
Yes.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock,
No.
Representative Zwanitzer cast an aye vote, an absentee vote. Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
The bill passes with 6 ayes and 3 noes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your testimony, and Representative Lawley. Now, members, so when we come back, I think we're going to be down in 6. Is that correct? We're going to be in West 6, just at the end down here. And so members of the public, and then we're going to start on House Bill 133 and then move to House Bill 52. Those are both similar bills. And then hopefully we'll have time to keep working on House Bill 103, pretty straightforward bill, and then House Bill 203. So thank you all for your work. Members of the public, thank you for being here, and we'll see you on noon recess. Thank you.
Thank you.